2020 marks the 150th year since the death of one of England's finest writers, Charles Dickens. As part of a programme of commemorative activity to celebrate the man and his work, a blue plaque trail will be installed in and around Medway. As an introduction to this, we'd like to share with you the sites in Rochester where visitors will be able to see the plaques. They will be able to stop, read and learn about Dickens and why that site was important to him and why so many of them feature in his stories. Beginning at the north end of the High Street, the Guildhall Museum will mark the first point in the trail. The Guildhall was featured in Dickens' masterpiece Great Expectations. It is the place where Pip, the young lad, is bound apprentice to Joe Gargery, the village blacksmith. The hall was a queer place, I thought, with higher pews in it than a church. Walking south along the High Street, we come to the Corn Exchange. Built in 1698 and with its fine overhanging clock, the Corn Exchange wasn't looked upon favourably by Dickens. In his essay Dullborough Town, he refers to the Corn Exchange as a mean little brick heap like a demented chapel. Turning right under Cemetery Gate, we are greeted by Rochester Cathedral. This, the second oldest cathedral in England, would have been very familiar to Dickens. Walking past it, he would have taken note of the many gravestones and the names etched upon them. One such stone is for a Fanny Dorrit. Dickens would later name a character Fanny in his novel Little Dorrit. Standing behind us now is the magnificent medieval fortress Rochester Castle. Dickens loved the castle, and in John Forster's biography of 1874, he notes, "He would himself have preferred to lie in the small graveyard under Rochester Castle wall." Charles Dickens was, however, buried at Westminster Abbey. A short walk around the back of the cathedral and past the King's School brings us to the Vines. Once the vineyard of a 16th century monastery, Dickens refers to this area as the Monk's Vineyard in his final and unfinished work, The Mystery of Edwin Drood. Continuing through the Vines, we approach an imposing Elizabethan mansion, Restoration House. Dickens took inspiration from this house and used it in Great Expectations. The home of Miss Havisham, Satis House, was based on Restoration House. Walking down Crow Lane back to the High Street brings us to the stunning Eastgate House. Eastgate House is such an important part of the Dickens story, it'll boast no less than 3 blue plaques. Firstly, the house itself features in The Mystery of Edwin Drood as Miss Twinkleton's Academy for Young Ladies. Next, as you turn into the formal gardens at the rear of the house, a horse-powered well pump, installed by Charles Dickens at his home, Gad's Hill Place, in 1857. The well was moved here in 1973. And finally, Charles Dickens' writing chalet, given as a gift to the great man in 1864 by his friend Charles Fechter. Built in his garden with help from the stage carpenter of the Lyceum Theatre, this was the place Charles Dickens wrote his last words in June 1870. Many more blue plaques will be added to this trail in and around Medway, helping visitors understand why this area was so special to Charles Dickens and why so many of its fine buildings and locations were featured in his great works.